evening. Welcome to the Other 24 Report. I'm Seymour Guff, and this is what's happening. Welcome to part 1 of our 3-part series, Climate Chaos, where we try to uncover the truth behind the predominant climate crisis narratives. We are all exposed to one-sided media stories about the critical state of our environment and the climate. Anyone who presents observations contrary to the accepted narratives is canceled, maligned, and called a science denier. So how do we find the actual truth in this avalanche of information? And yes, misinformation. Of course, I think everyone agrees that we should all be concerned about the health of our planet and do our part to contribute to a clean and sustainable environment. But who do we believe and what actually is happening to our climate? Unfortunately, while most people rely on legacy media and governments for their information, the reality is, to really find the truth, you must search out different credible information sources and gather a variety of perspectives to zero in on the facts and to develop your own opinions. People who have cultivated a loyalty to certain media sources and have built a level of trust with specific news personalities are very difficult to persuade, even when they are presented with solid scientific facts from alternate credible sources of information. They simply don't want to hear it if it hasn't come from their favorite news source. That situation creates a very dangerous environment for truth when government and corporate money provides that kind of influential power and forces captured media outlets that rely on their funding to follow a specific narrative that favors government and corporate bias, usually for the sake of power and money, regardless of the truth. So, let's take a hard look at the climate change messaging and try to look at the facts and who may benefit from the various narratives out there. The alarm on the carbon footprint of each country has taken front stage in the media and many government policies over the last few years. The buildup of carbon in our atmosphere has been targeted as the reason for rising temperatures and climate change.
CO2 is a gas made up of 3 parts, or atoms, 1 carbon and 2 oxygen. Its full name, carbon dioxide. It occurs naturally in our atmosphere and it's a vital part of life on Earth. People and most animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants use CO2 to help them grow. But it has a much bigger role to play too. It helps regulate the temperature of our planet. That's because CO2 is one of the main greenhouse gases. It acts like the glass in a greenhouse by keeping some of the heat from the sun trapped inside the Earth's atmosphere. That's a good thing because without it, the planet would be too cold for us to live on. But the natural world works on an incredibly delicate balance, and human activity, especially over the last 50 years, has increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Too much of the sun's heat is getting trapped, and our planet is getting hotter.
So, if CO2 is the issue, then consider these facts. Trees and all plant life on Earth need CO2 as part of their life cycle and photosynthesis. They absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, which seems like a fairly important role within a healthy ecosystem.
And that's where trees come in. They have a major role to play in taking in carbon dioxide, one of the most prominent greenhouse gases, and locking up the carbon for centuries. They do this through photosynthesis. The leaves of growing trees absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide, releasing oxygen and locking up the carbon until the tree eventually dies and decays or is burnt. Some of the carbon from falling leaves enters the woodland soil and is stored there for the long term, making the entire woodland ecosystem an important carbon store.
That being the case, doesn't it make sense that we should be focused on planting and saving trees to help with carbon dioxide reduction within the Earth's atmosphere? Why isn't there more public outrage and government action on stopping the destruction of the planet's rainforests? And why isn't more being done to eliminate the massive plastic pollution of our oceans? It is estimated that an area the size of a soccer field of precious rainforest land in the world is destroyed every minute.
Brazilian officials have told the BBC that there's been an aggressive increase in deforestation since the election of President Bolsonaro in January. An area of Amazon rainforest roughly the size of a football pitch is now being cleared every minute. The rainforest, which plays a vital role in regulating the Earth's climate, covers an area 20 times the size of Britain. Nearly 2/3 of it is in Brazil. Crucially, it absorbs billions of tons of carbon dioxide every year and produces 20% of the oxygen in the atmosphere.
And that isn't the worst of it. Biomass fuel subsidies are being offered to corporations by governments around the world to cut down trees, actually reducing the planet's ability to absorb excess CO2, and then burning the trees, creating more CO2. Does that make sense to you? How is this helping? Jeff Gibbs, a longtime environmentalist, investigates a biomass plant in Vermont. Here is an excerpt from the documentary called Planet of the Humans from executive producer Michael Moore.
They claim they're just using forest residues, but actually a great deal of what the McNeil facility and lots of biomass facilities burn is whole trees. As you can see by this pile that's stacked right outside of the facility, these are trees.
It turns out that the biggest source of green energy in Vermont is something called biomass, burning trees to create electricity.
This is definitely not the way, and that the first step is actually looking at our lifestyles and how we can reduce our energy consumption. This is all the ash that has varying levels of toxic metals, a great deal of radiation, as these trees have been absorbed. Oops,
Why isn't more being done to protect the planet's trees, which are literally the lungs of the earth? Many large corporations rely on deforestation within their supply chain for ingredients like palm oil, cocoa, soy, sugar, meat, and coffee in order to produce their products. Unfortunately, the truth is, there isn't any money in saving trees. If you think corporations and banks are motivated by saving the planet rather than adding to their bottom line and providing dividends to their shareholders, think again. Here, Deutsche Bank employees pose for a picture during a tree planting project in Germany. But, according to the Global Witness Deforestation Dividends investigation in 2021, over the past 5 years, the bank has provided $4.5 billion in backing to some of the world's worst deforesters. We now go over to Salvatore Salvaggio for more. Salvatore?
Thank you, Seymour.
Here is a test for a little bit of the common sense. The attack on the farmers in agriculture is one of the mandates of the climate crisis of people. The farmers are the ones that produce all of the food for the world. The government in the Ireland, they now have the plan to make the farmers kill over 200,000 of the cattle in the name of the climate change. They claim that the cattle produce too much, what do you call, the methane. Yes, you heard me right, the cow farts. And all that cow gas is adding up to the global warming. Let's take a look at a little bit of the context and the common sense to what these guys in the Irish Parliament plan to do. In the North America, there were about 30,000 of the bison in the year 2019. But in the late 1800s, it is an estimate that there were about 60 million of the bison that roamed the great North American plains. But because of a disease and the overhunting of the bison, they almost became extinct. So, when the 60 million bison were here, were their farts a bigger concern then? Did the extra 59,970,000 bison make it the climate crisis? I'm not thinking so. So, let's think for just a moment. What a possible difference can killing the 200,000 cows making it a bigger climate picture? Nothing! Son of my beach! And there's more! The Irish government has the plan, after they kill all of their own cows, to reduce their own food supply and to force their own Irish farmers into the bankruptcy. They plan to bring in the country's beef from Brazil. Yeah, you heard me. Brazil. Son of my beach. The very same country that is destroying the rainforest to make more of the land for the grazing of their own cattle and a beef production.
Figures in the Farming Independent showing 200,000 cattle to be culled by 2025, just in a year and a half's time. It's an incredible threat to the farming sector at a cost of about €600 million. Now, a full 25% of the beef that's been imported to the European Union is now coming from Brazil. How is it environmentally friendly to fell large swathes of the Amazon, import that beef from Brazil to substitute for Irish beef that is being culled here in this state? There's a significant threat hanging over farmers in this country, and we must have a debate to crystallise exactly what the plan of this government is.
Son of my beach! The very same country that is destroying the rainforest to make more of the land for the grazing of their own cattle and a beef production. This is crazy! Back to you, Seymour. Thanks, Salvatore. So, do all of the climate scientists agree? The globalists and billionaires row would like us to believe that all scientists support the extreme alarmist climate narrative. But is it true? To find out more, let's go into the field with Scoop, our on-the-scene reporter. Scoop? Am I on? Whoa, okay. I am here at the Senate Subcommittee on Climate Change, where Dr. Judith Curry is about to testify. Dr. Curry
is one of the world's most renowned climate scientists and has blown the whistle on manufactured climate crisis narratives. Dr. Curry reveals through her testimony that scientists are pursuing incentives of fame and fortune that lead them to exaggerate or even fabricate the alleged climate risks. According to Dr. Curry, one of the simplest and most effective ways for climate scientists to gain fame and fortune is to make false claims linking the weather to global warming. Let's listen in.
I thank the chairman and the ranking members for the opportunity to offer testimony today. Prior to 2009, I felt that supporting the IPCC consensus on climate change was a responsible thing to do. I bought into the argument, don't trust what one scientist says, trust what an international team of 1,000 scientists has said after years of careful deliberation. That all changed for me in November 2009 following the leaked ClimateGate emails that illustrated the sausage making and even bullying that went into building the consensus. I started speaking out, saying that scientists needed to do better at making the data and supporting information publicly available, being more transparent about how they reach conclusions, doing a better job of assessing uncertainties, and actively engaging with scientists having minority perspectives. The response of my colleagues to this is summed up by the title of a 2010 article in the Scientific American. Climate heretic Judith Curry turns on her colleagues. I came to the growing realization that I had fallen into the trap of groupthink. I had accepted the consensus based on second-order evidence, the assertion that a consensus existed. I began making an independent assessment of topics in climate science that had the most relevance to policy. And what have I concluded from this assessment? Human-caused climate change is a theory in which the basic mechanism is well understood, but whose magnitude is highly uncertain. No one questions that surface temperatures have increased overall since 1880, or that humans are adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, or that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have a warming effect on the planet. However, there is considerable uncertainty and disagreement about the most consequential issues, whether the warming has been dominated by human causes versus natural variability, how much the planet will warm in the 21st century, and whether warming is dangerous. The central issue in the scientific debate on climate change is the extent to which the recent and future warming is caused by humans versus natural climate variability. Research effort and funding has focused on understanding human causes of climate change. However, we have been misled in our quest to understand climate change by not paying sufficient attention to natural causes of climate variability, in particular from the sun and from the long-term oscillations in ocean circulations. Why do scientists disagree about climate change? The historical data is sparse and inadequate. There's disagreement about the value of different classes of evidence, notably the value of global climate models. There's disagreement about the appropriate logical framework for linking and assessing the evidence. And scientists disagree over assessments of areas of ambiguity and ignorance. How then and why have climate scientists come to a consensus about a very complex scientific problem that the scientists themselves acknowledge has substantial and fundamental uncertainties? Climate scientists have become entangled in an acrimonious political debate that has polarized the scientific community. As a result of my analyses that challenge IPCC conclusions, I have been called a denier by other climate scientists, and most recently by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. My motives have been questioned by Representative Grijalva in a recent letter sent to the president of Georgia Tech. There is enormous pressure for climate scientists to conform to the so-called consensus. This pressure comes not only from politicians, but from federal funding agencies, universities and professional societies, and scientists themselves who are green activists. Reinforcing this consensus are strong monetary, reputational, and authority interests. In this politicized environment, advocating for carbon dioxide emissions reductions is becoming the default expected position for climate scientists. This advocacy extends to the professional society that publish journals and organize conference. Policy advocacy, when combined with understating the uncertainties, risks destroying science's reputation for honesty and objectivity, without which scientists become regarded as merely another lobbyist group. I would like to thank the committee for raising the issue of data versus dogma in support of improving the integrity of climate science. This concludes my testimony.
Back to you, Seymour.
Thanks, Scoop. Dr. Curry is not alone. Dr. John Clauser, an experimental physicist and Nobel Prize winner, has also presented his views on the climate controversy and has come out to debunk the climate crisis. For his expert approach to climate science, Dr. Clauser has been one of the scientists canceled for his observations based on actual science that are counter to the mainstream narrative. When did it become permissible to cancel scientists for entering into debate with their colleagues? Isn't debate the foundation of science? More scientists are starting to speak out. There is a declaration signed by over 1,600 of the world's scientists stating that there is no climate crisis. The scientists who signed the declaration are from across the world and are members of the Global Climate Intelligence Group, an affiliate of the Climate Intelligence Foundation, a think tank operating in the fields of climate change and policy. You can find the report on the Climate Intelligence website at www.clintel.org. Don't miss part 2 of Climate Chaos. We will be investigating some of the claims made by the solar and wind industries and if they really have a chance to replace fossil fuels. So that's what's happening. We look forward to your comments below and hope that you will like and share this video to help spread the truth. I'm Seymour Duff, signing off until next time. Keep asking questions and looking for answers. Everyone has 24 hours in their day. Which 24 will you live?